Hello, guys. Welcome back to the channel or podcast. And today I'm going to be going over just the NFC West sort of like fantasy football rankings and stuff sort of in that area and how it sort of affects players in the NFC West with their fantasy value and their ADP, which is their average draft position, which kind of just means where on average getting drafted in fantasy drafts and my rankings for them in a positional stance. And just before I get into it, if a player has an unranked little tab on him there, that means they're outside of my top 30 for quarterbacks, outside of my top 40 for running backs, outside of my top 15 for tight ends, and outside of my top 41 for receiver. So, yeah. Let's just get right into it. And we're going to start off with Kyler Murray, whose ADP is 37.67, as in he's going at pick 37-38 on average. Which, if you're on a 12-man league, that's the beginning of the fourth round. 4-2 is the pick, fourth round, second pick in the draft. But my ranking for positional-wise is the third quarterback, and at that spot, he's probably going to be the second or third quarterback taken off the board, so I don't mind that ADP. But when you look at the types of players that are still available there, I would way rather be taking another running back there, and let's just say Elijah Mitchell probably would be in that area, as he is. At least he's a 48.12, but Kyler Murray, I think his ADP is too high for me to be taking him, as he is my third quarterback, and my best quarterback is Justin Herbert, and he's going in the 5th/6th round, I believe. So, Kyler Murray's ADP is a little too high for me to be considering him heavily at the spot. I'm now going on to James Conner, whose ADP is 13.5, and he's my 10th ranked running back. So I think that's a heavy overdraft. But in his spot, that means he's either going to pick 13 or 14 in drafts, mainly. So it's more favored to the 13 spot, obviously. But when you look at it, James Conner is a still very valuable running back that just sort of needs help. I don't know what's going to happen with him. Like, if he is just going to be the primary back there or they're going to sign some guy. But I believe that James Conner will be a great running back for you. And it will be a reach at the spot where they're probably getting drafted. But I think it is a worthy reach, as you're still going to get great production. Now going on to Marquise Brown, who's a very big steal in my opinion in the draft. I think it's very cool to see Marquise Brown here. His ADP is 94, so on average he's going at the 94th pick in drafts. So let's just do a little math here. That's going in almost the 8th round in 12-man leagues. So he's a very low 7th round sort of guy, but a high 8th sort of positional there. He is my 15th ranked receiver, and he is by far, and I mean by far, a great receiver. He is miles above any of the guys that are going in that range. And I think it is a pure steal to be getting him there, as for the first 6 weeks, he will be the primary target. And I don't see how he doesn't get at least 4 100-yard games. Yeah, I'm saying 4 100-yard games, so that's over 4 weeks of 10-plus points guaranteed. So, obviously, after that 6-7 game stretch of Hopkins being suspended, he will be less valuable because Hopkins will be back, but they're not going to limit his targets by any extent. Like, they're not going to limit his targets a ton, pretty much. And I think it is impossible to be taking him out of the offense completely, so you're still going to get a PPR format where he's still dominant. You're going on to Hopkins. He's average draft position is 118.5, so he's going at 118 or 119 most likely. He's my 41th ranked receiver because of that 6th game suspension, he's not going to have the total points of any other receiver, really, even close to any of the top receivers. But once he is back, I can see him being a top 10 fantasy receiver. So he is by far the probably best value in that range. I would take him over Marquise Brown, personally, just because of that upside towards the playoffs. But I can see why you would take Marquise Brown because of that full season value. He just has, like Hopkins, he has so many injury concerns at this range. So you're thinking, hey, that's a second-roundish player who really shouldn't be going this late. So you should take him in the 9th if he's there, as I think he would be. I don't see why he wouldn't. So I'm taking him in the 9th with absolute pleasure. Now moving on to Zach Ertz, whose ADP is 80.67, so he's mainly going at pick 81 in drafts. And that would stand as the very back end of the, I believe it would be the very back end of the 7th round, I believe. So back out of the 7th is sort of his average draft position, and he's my 7th ranked tight end. And being my 7th ranked tight end, I believe he should be going at pick 60. So this is a great value if you're going to get Zach Ertz. I mean, I know they drafted Trey McBride, but as I said for Marquise Brown, after those first 6 weeks, he's not going to have so much value, but those first 6 weeks, he will be dominant because of those open targets that Kyler Murray is going to have to throw to. It's going to have to be him, Trey McBride, or Marquise Brown, and I'm betting on it's going to be Marquise Brown and Zach Ertz. So I see very high upside with Ertz and very low of a floor, because I don't think McBride is ready to be taking over that tight end role, as they just signed Zach Ertz to a 3-year deal. So I'm taking Ertz with the confidence that he will be dominant. Now going on to Seattle. You got Kenneth Walker, who is an interesting running back. I mean, he is by far probably the best running back in the draft class, but that isn't saying much, as there wasn't too much competition there, in my opinion, besides Breece Hall. And I liked Breece Hall better than Kenneth Walker as a pure prospect, but I liked Kenneth Walker's upside, so I took Kenneth Walker in more mock drafts. But Kenneth Walker is going at pick 83 pretty much. It's at 82.56 ADP. So he's going at pretty much pick 83. He's unranked for me. He's outside of the top 40. I'm not even taking Kenneth Walker in any sort of sample size in my drafts unless he falls to me at pick 100 and lower, which is pretty much never going to happen. So I am not taking any sort of sample size of Kenneth Walker. Yes, the upside is there now that Chris Carson has to retire because of his neck injury, but Kenneth Walker, I just don't think is ready for this season to be taking on that lead role behind the worst offensive line in football, according to PFF. And I just don't see a way that Kenneth Walker dominates. So he is just unranked for me. I am going to be going in deeper with all of my rankings here. I'm going to probably go up to 30 tight ends, 80 receivers, probably 50, 60 running backs. So quarterbacks is fine, because you shouldn't be drafting anyone outside of the top 30 of the quarterbacks. But I believe that Kenneth Walker will be a bust this year in fantasy, so I'm not taking him. But I think next year and all the years to come will be great, because Rashad Penny's on a contract year, and if Penny does not get a contract this year, it's Kenneth Walker's backfield, and you're not going to be drafting or really signing anyone to take over that role if you really believe in Kenneth Walker. So, I mean, there you go, I guess. But now moving on to Rashad Penny, a guy who's in this backfield who's done really good things when healthy. His ADP is 96.38, which means he's going at pick 96 pretty much, which is decent value for him, I believe. He's way better value for me than Kenneth Walker. And he's the 25th ranked running back. He's just gonna be splitting the carries with Kenneth Walker, so that really lowers him down my list. But I can see Penny starting for the first couple weeks, Like, just pure. He'll be the pure starter, I think, for the first 2 weeks, unless Kenneth Walker is the most amazing running back at camp, like you've ever seen. I think he'll have the first 2 weeks from the backfield all to himself. But after that, I think it's going to be more of a split carry sort of thing. And I'm not like a fan of split carry backfields. So I just don't think his sample size is big enough for me to be really drafting him in too many leagues. So I'm not too high on him. Now we're going to DK Metcalf, whose average draft position is at 55. So 55.25 is his ADP, but he's mainly going to pick 55. Is his rough range there. And he's my wide receiver 25 in this whole spiel here. So I am not getting any DK Metcalf. That ceiling is low. The floor is astronomically low. He's an injury-riddled player who's entering a contract year, so he's going to want to get paid before the season because he knows he's going to have a down year because Drew Lock, Geno Smith, or Jacob Eason is going to be his starting quarterback. And that is absolutely terrible for fantasy. Do not draft DK Metcalf. I am telling you this now. Do not draft him. He is not worth your valuable pick at pick 55. That is just terrible. I'd rather take Hopkins or Marquise Brown there. That is just terrible value for DK Metcalf. Now moving on to Tyler Lockett. His average draft position is 109.38. So he's going at pick 109 most likely. He's my wide receiver 28. This is where I can fathom Tyler Lockett in a high ceiling sort of player because of his speed, and he's going to be the wideout too, so he's going to have a lot less attention. But I just don't think I can fathom taking a Seattle wide receiver this year unless you're in a PPR format. They could actually get a lot of catches, but I highly doubt you're going to see many big plays from them. And I mean, that's really all I need to do on Lockett, though. Now we're going on to Noah Fant, who actually has insane upside this year. He's going at pick 92, just flat is his ADP. He is my tight end 12, so I'm normally going to be waiting in this spot to grab Herb Smith Jr., but he's valuable, I think. He will get a lot of targets, probably 8-ish targets a game, probably get 5-6 catches a game. And I believe that is high upside, as that's actually probably like 3 points on your team each week. And that is astronomically high. Like, that is an extra 3 points you're going to need to win your games. But Fant is just a guy. I'm not going to get a ton of sample size in drafts because he's on Seattle. I just am not loving the Seahawks this year. So, just not really my cup of tea there. Now going on to the Rams. Matthew Stafford. His average ADP is 32. He's my QB 13. You lose Robert Woods. You lose Odell Beckham. 2 very good pieces to your offense. But you gain Allen Robinson, and you're really hoping Van Jefferson can step in that spot. See, now, he was the QB5 last year, I believe, but I am seeing a huge decline from Stafford because he doesn't have chemistry with these other receivers. Because, I mean, obviously he didn't have any chemistry going in with Cooper Kupp and all these other guys, but they schemed the ball to those guys. You have to trust Cooper Kupp now as a wideout 1 because you have trust in him that he can be the best receiver in the league. So, you really have to put your trust into him, and I think Cooper Kupp is going to have a great year this year because of those vacated targets. But Stafford just, I think, is a very low-end quarterback for me this year, and is heavily overdrafted. Cam Akers, his average ADP is 60, which, I mean, hey, that is good for him, I think. Like, I can see why people are drafting him because of that high upside. But he's my running back 21. I just don't think he's going to be the best. The Rams like to give the ball to everyone, really, in their backfield. So that means Darrell Henderson is going to probably get, at minimum, a fourth of the carries. So that's a fourth of the carries that Cam Akers isn't going to get. Plus, when Cam Akers is tired. So that's probably going to take away another eighth. So you're getting to the point where it's 3/8 of the carries, almost half, are taken away from Cam Akers, so that's a very small sample size, and I just don't think we've seen enough. Then we went on to Cooper Kupp. His average draft position is 6.5, so he's going at pick 6 and 7 in drafts this year. He's my wideout 2, right behind Jefferson. But I am taking Kupp with confidence in his spot unless Justin Jefferson is there, or some guy I like better, let's say Cook. But Cooper Kupp is going to have a great sample size. He is going to explode in offensive potential for the Rams. I just don't see how he is going to not be a top-tier wide receiver again this year. Now moving on to Allen Robinson, who is going at pick 107.2 as his ADP, so pick 107 on average. He's my wideout 31, so he's lower down there, but his upside is astronomical. I can see him getting up into the top 10 of wide receivers. I can see him dropping down to 50. So I tried evening that out, sort of, and picking 30, 31 as his sort of 80, like not ADP, but wide receiver rank. For me, my personal things from this, I can see him getting to 20 and 40. So those are my ranges, but you can easily see 10 to 50. But I'm putting the more safe bet on Allen Robinson to be the wide receiver 31 because of that Rams offense, and I think they're just going to have to slow down the pace a little with having to get all these new guys in there. So their loss, really. So now we're on to Tyler Higbee, which is going to be a quick one because I do not really care about him. I'm going to be honest. His average ADP is 138.5. So he's probably going to pick 138, 139 in drafts. He's unranked for me. Not too much to talk about besides I think he's in the second fantasy this year. So do not draft Tyler Higbee. Now moving on to the 49ers here. They got Trey Lance. So Trey Lance is going to pick 101 in drafts. And he's my QB5. Trey Lance is a steal in your drafts. You are going to be taking Trey Lance with confidence. He is going to be great. He is going to demolish everyone. He is the guy. Trey Lance is your guy. He is the best value in fantasy this year. I think either him or Kirk Cousins or Irv Smith Jr. They're going to have insane value this season. Trey Lance, very nice passing ability. Has ability to scramble. It is going to be insane. Elijah Mitchell, 48.12. He is gonna be great for the 49ers. I'm not saying in fantasy. He's my wide back, sort of wide back now because I guess I shouldn't be saying wide back. Running back is his actual proper position, but with that Deebo Samuel thing, he's going down to 17 because I just don't think Mitchell is going to be seeing all of the carries now that Deebo Samuel has realized, yes, I can also be a running back. So Mitchell is a guy I would take at his ADP, but I'm not taking with the utmost confidence because of just the downside of his pick, but he has very high upside, so it's sort of a hit or miss sort of player. See, now Deebo Samuel is going at pick, well, his ADP is 24.12, and that is oddly high. I mean, that's second round, third, sort of in a 12-man league. And he's my wideout 8. So he's in a top 10, like, sort of situation there, but I just don't know if he's going to amount to too much in the receiving game because I think his running game is going to be great. He is a wide receiver, so I'm ranking him as a receiver, not a pure player. If I'm ranking him as a pure player, yes, he's going to be up there. He's probably going to be top 10 in fantasy just all around. As a player, if the 49ers continue to use him the way that they have. So, Deebo Samuel probably has the highest upside of any of the wide receivers, I think, this year, in some sort of a realistic sense. And not just a hot take sort of sense. So, take Deebo Samuel, pretty much. Brandon Ayuk, his ADP is 151. It's going to be a quick one. He's unranked for me. Brandon Ayuk, I just don't think he's going to see the target shares that he normally would. So, Brandon Ayuk is missing out, and that's him. He's done. That was a very quick section on Brandon Ayuk, but I just don't favor him right now in any sort of things. Until I see in camp, I'm going to be adjusting this list throughout until my personal drafts are done, so probably September 1st. I'm going to be doing stuff like this. But Brandon Ayuk right now is just unranked. He's outside my top 41 receivers, so I'm not ranking him. So, end of story. George Kittle now, 46.71 is his ADP, so he's going at pretty much pick 47. He's my tight end 4, so I think this is about where he should be going, as he is a great player. He is very, very high upside with all those vacated targets. Not as in vacated targets, I guess that wasn't the proper term, but more realistic targets, because he's going to be the safety net for Trey Lance. So, he is very high upside, and I like George Kittle this year in fantasy. So that is my NFC West rankings for fantasy football, and I hope you guys enjoyed, and we will see you next time.